spider can. Spins a web any size, catches steam just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big hang up. Wherever there's a hang up, you'll find the Spider-Man.
Better 10 minutes late than never to arrive at all. An apt kick-off from my in-depth dive into Spider-Man from Insomniac Games, the single most popular Marvel comic book hero ever to grace pages or screens. With Sony now owning the game and movie license, we are treated to Insomniac's pinnacle of now generation development. So stick around as we take a bite out of this Big Apple. Initial moments, it is obvious this title is a labour of love for the material, fresh on the back of the Ratchet and Clank reboots that gave them time to acquaint themselves and the tools to the machine, using them to maximise the upper bounds AMD and Sony powered APUs inside the siblings of the PS4 era, and join the fold of other platform exclusives that push the limits of that potential. Unlike God of War though, prior, the gap here lies in one area: resolution. Both consoles push a very high and consistently impressive image quality, a vast leap over their last PS4 and Pro titles. Here the temporal AA in use is very effective in reducing any high frequency disruptions from thin edges, alpha transparencies, or the common specular highlights, basically the shading issues. The base model is so good in fact that even playing on a 4K screen delivers a sharp and stable IQ as you whip through the streets or admire the razor sharp material details. Pro is of course better than this and only really stands out when on a 4K screen. Sure, it is more stable and sharper than the base on a 1080p one with downsampling active, but could be classed as a very minor enhancement if not viewed on a large UHD display, which is of course the entire point of the Pro version here. It also aptly demonstrates the naming convention of engines, techniques or effects can at times be a misnomer. Just like Ratchet and Clank, the team's own temporal injection anti-aliasing is used to increase or improve the image quality further, with this element being a Pro edition. The base PS4 renders out, from all my counts, at a full 1920 by 1080p as a base resolution, this being one of the easier games to count at times as it appears to only use TAA, so the first frames when a flick is made are fully naked. From long view distances, real-time cutscenes or heavy action, I never encountered any counts below this number. But as a caveat, dynamic is still a very real option, not least in the fact that the Pro version does indeed run a dynamic solution. This title, with a high of 2816 by 1584, and then scales back down to my E3 2017 analysis of 2560 by 1440. Which is a great point to touch on in terms of optimization improvements. Although some may say, it's only 144 more pixels, but this is a not insubstantial 21% increase in rendering fill rate from that older version. Pat on the back time, guys and girls. Now backing this up and possibly confusing some of the counts more is that temporal injection, which is significantly improved here from Ratchet and Clank. It takes the accumulative information from previous frames and blends them with a stochastic distribution method, achieving a higher quality, and it appears to work best on the horizontal axis, with some counts coming in at an almost full width of 3840. But these are from low movement sections, and thus cutscenes benefit from these, as do long views of the Manhattan skyline. Again, this accumulation of data can help both axes improve, but we never appear to hit a native pixel count exceeding that 1584 ceiling. But the image quality is excellent on a 4K screen. In sheer numbers, the Pro is pushing 77 to 115% more pixels than its older brother, and this is the most efficient use of the hardware from a development point of view. It must also be stated that although the temporal AA is one of the most aggressive I have seen, with high contrasted colour changes, such as the framework here behind Spider-Man's red suit being visible for 8 to 12 frames after the flick within his suit, These are rare and extreme examples to get my point across, but I'm very, very impressed by how clean and sharp the game's details and micro facets look in play, which I touch on later. To summarise, this is one game that demonstrates with exceptional proficiency that 1080 still delivers first-rate image quality.
All units advised, a vehicle pursuit is in progress. Location is north of Houston. Over.
How exactly do you think this ends well for you?
With the pixels out of the way, we move to fluidity and the first of many equals for the two versions. This is capped at all times to 30 Hz or 30 FPS. Every 33 milliseconds the engine needs to render out a new frame, and this is the target both versions do a very good job of. Swinging through the city, laying wait to multiple bad guys, or enjoying the gorgeous real-time cinematics, the PS4 and the Pro hold that line very consistently indeed. Now this is not to say all things are flatline. You can have some minor dips, and due to the double buffered frame delivery the engine runs, these can of course cause a few spikes into that 16 millisecond time as the RAM space is required, and this allows it to flip early to get back into lockstep. These are rare, and the Pro can sometimes have 16 millisecond spikes with no preceding stutter into 50 milliseconds. The other bigger dips can happen in the action from explosions here on the Pro, with dual buffers causing a small run into 50 milliseconds, which plays out on my real-time frame graph here with a 25 to 20 FPS level. This is the absolute worst I could find, and incredibly rare I must stress. The PS4 can infrequently drop a frame or two when traversing Manhattan, with again only a handful of hand frames to show for it. The metrics and performance between the two consoles is so close in fact that my average frame rate between the two comes out identical on both, which is an excellent result, and any worries of bad performance, stutters or streaming hiccups can be put to rest. The majority of the longer 60-80 millisecond hangs happen when camera cuts during the story moments, which would be missed and do not affect the gameplay while they flip physics and geometry over, and obviously texture assets and materials, leaving you to concentrate on being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is amazing.
Don't even know about. Let's dive right into the calls. Speak.
Okay, so not for nothing. You gotta give Spider-Man respect for taking down Wilson Fisk, right? I mean, one less mob boss is good for everyone.
Is that right? Tell me.
Now that you quit smoking, what do you tell people when you come up here?
That I need a break from their crap.
Fair enough.
The final process of performance analysis involves synapses by proxy or input latency, which is actually a surprising varied metric. You can check out my method for testing this on my website, with other videos covering this topic in much more detail below. For taking the base PS4, we use a combination of camera movement, running, shooting or actions, and then take the high and low to give us the median value, which is a little over 100 milliseconds, but in some actions this can climb to 172 milliseconds, and actually works well within the movement or moment-to-moment combat the game's nucleus is built upon. On the Pro, we do see the extra CPU and memory subsystem helping shorten this to a new 92 millisecond peak, giving us a circa 5% improvement on response times, which may be of notice to those Cyberdyne models of you out there. Now this is low enough to be within margin of error though, but what I found was enlightening in that these results vary based on the specific actions, and camera movement is clearly the fastest, and intelligently so. Now, as it is the most common area of movement. Now, animation sets are not likely fully resident in memory at all times, which can also be the cause for some of these slower responses depending on the action themselves, but action through play I never felt it was slow or unresponsive title, even though compared to some other Insomniac games it is not the highest performer. It is certainly of little concern and complements a proficient use of the resource and the fantastic results on screen. With the numbers covered, our attention turns to what they all mean to our eyeballs, and in a word, it is...
What do you got for me today, New York.
Insomniac are experts at creating large, open and free-flowing environments with which to apply your digital skills. A largely missed title that really feels like a proof of concept in hindsight is Sunset Overdrive, another exclusive that landed from Microsoft Studios near the Xbox One's launch some 4 years ago now. Although not itself a superhero game, it shares much with those games, following a superhuman ability of traversal that mixed jet set radio rail grinds with Olympic quality high jumping. Tooled up with a single L1 activated weapon wheel, which has been used across various other titles, you can change weapons or gadgets with a slow motion application as you zip across the city with a fluid and resourceful travel system. Bright style, colours and design gave it a very distinct complexion that found far more success later with Overwatch and Fortnite. The similarities are obvious from a design and UI point of view, but clearly the budget, team and aims are on a much vaster scale, which I am sure the team themselves would acknowledge. It is quite remarkable just how much of a leap in fidelity over those 4 years have seen. The PS4 alone is not the single reason. Skin construction is vastly superior, hyper-realistic rather than photo, but within the physically approximate realms to convince. From freckles on skin, open pores, light penetration and scattering, complete with a Fresnel specular map, leave you in no doubt this is a leap up over older R&C titles and sits comfortably within the Sony exclusive banner. Beyond the skin material is the sheer quantity and construction of the world materials. Pure texture maps to portray object detail is largely confined to last generation now. Many facets of layers are composited to give a variety of brickwork, stone walls, marble, bronze or even weathered roads with a porcelain oil slick across the top. Shop fronts or skyscrapers provide both macro and micro details that really stand up to Spidey's lens. Photo mode is an excellent tool that has been a key ingredient for PlayStation this generation, and Peter is a dab hand at some rousing photography. Clothing deserves a special place here, with the recent furore on the downgrade highlighting just how much of a fool's errand that was. From the individual fabric weave or latex-like chemical, you can see the high reflectance of specular as the Fresnel surface and microfacet surface breaks, absorbs, bounces and ultimately diffuses the light with an unerring array from multiple light sources. Broad sunshine gives a strong, almost red glow as a primary colour that promotes emissive high reflectance over the edges. The same suit in moonlight now diffuses and disperses that soft light, absorbing its pale glow, leaving a subdued and muted outfit that still exhibits those same material construction properties and conviction. Lighting interaction within the material system is a strong point of the engine. See, as the moonlight changes and colour tones under a spotlight, the red of the suit turns purple and specular highlight changes tone across the Fresnel edges in conjunction with the light. Undercolored lighting, the material emissive colour mixes with the light source to make a blue turquoise, almost like a porcelain paint, as the light reacts with the fibre colours. The combination of suit materials, environment types and lighting conditions offer up a variety of images with red emissive glow under spotlights to the soft shade and surface depth under other low light conditions. A clear example of how much lighting artists can transform the good into the great.
Did that just happen? Yeah.
Now, this is true no matter the time of day or weather conditions. We are treated to fixed times of day across the story alongside weather changes. The range sections in particular highlight the material system as a specular maps are raised in bias, giving a clean and scattered look across the suit, yet another pose for our web slingers portfolio. The main character here is the city. A very impressive recreation of Manhattan Island takes centre stage in this adventure. Looming skyscrapers, towering bridges, clustered parks and even penthouses are all rendered with a remarkable level of accuracy and distance. Lot management and scale is something of wonder here at times, as the entire isle is constructed into tile sets, keeping each area in memory as you hit the key sector points. With the space, the new area is then streamed in as the old one is erased behind you. A feat that is all the more impressive from the sheer lick Webbicon muster across the city. Taking a short run around the roads, alleys and shops on terra firma, you are only a mere second or so away from being 1,000 feet up and a mile away from where you were. This is all handled with a staggering amount of fluidity that never lets these seams show. Just as you can zip back down again from atop your perch, imposters are again widely used, replacing 3D models for 2D shapes. Trees, buildings, cars, and even people are all mixed with these to keep the light memory constraints and geometry load to a minimum. Something evident in the cube maps used across the highest quality resolution are all used the higher up you are. As you spend more time here and texture geometry load as a whole is reduced, it favours the distance and speed to scale with the quality, as you're not rendering quite as much detailed geometry and objects as you are down on the ground. Mixing this up is the great combination of screen space reflections, which are abundantly used on all vertical and horizontal surfaces that we're reflecting, so therefore you get a mixture of the cube maps and the building at the edges along the ground, and obviously in all the attack sequence and those infamous puddles you can see as much reflectance as the little eyes can take. An excellent barometer of just how impressive Insomniac's results are here is another contender for developing this actual game. Sucker Punch launched the system in fine form with Second Son, an excellent title that still looks great now, but is already starting to show the leap from the same hardware. IQ is obvious, with far more shimmer from the lack of any temporal AA. Large transitions can be jarring, as flat, plain textures on building fronts solve the shimmer at the cost of detail. Once flicked to geometry, the detail is improved, as are the textures themselves as the resolution is improved, at the expense though of sub-pixel breakup, something you will really struggle to see in Spiderman no matter how hard you look. Amazing really.
Can you swing by the precinct? Got an issue that could benefit from your unique skill set.
For you, Yuri, anything. I'm on my way.
Another high point is a constant of these games, animation. Facial capture now mirrors motion capture, allowing us to really see and feel emotion in scenes. Never to be taken for granted just how impressive it is, and how much work actually goes into creating the meshes with a vast amount of joints and bone vectors to work with. With the facial rigs themselves offering up approximately 60,000 vertices or primitives, it offers a wealth of different facial expressions using a combination of blend shapes and bone rigging. Building on this is the combat and traversal system. Controlling and parkouring your way around not only feels natural, but simply believable. Yeah, I know, nothing's further from the truth, but webs are no longer supported by the clouds. Hang on a minute, I thought the web was hosted in the clouds. That's what marketing always tells me. Anyway, the point is, although it suspends your disbelief enough for you to not question it, even though it's quite obvious you're not really attaching to the corner of that building, it quite simply nails this feeling of being Spider-Man better than anything else. Contributing to this fluidity is the combat, building on previous hero titles and a key ingredient to all third-person exclusives since, well, Second Son, is the dynamic takedown system, which weaves into the wealth of systemic choices and aids the teams have included here. 5 to 10 foes are little more than fist and foot fodder, as Peter wipes the floor with them using a cascade of kicks, flips, counters and combos, and scenery takedowns to clean up dem streets and puddles. It's simply how you can seamlessly and effortlessly string these together that make them the highlight of the game's mechanic and the core loop for me. It's not since God of War have I wanted to unlock and mix up all the attack types, even though I want more. What that is there is simply phenomenal. Now the bumpers are clearly up, as you are whipped into position within feet of enemies. Auto target and lock on is abundant, with a little time delay when you grab enemies or bombs or projectiles and flip them back. But who cares when you can string together epic moments that Jackie Chan would be impressed with. Not only is the sheer wealth of these great, but just the animation blends as they flow as if part of a choreographed battle and not actually emergent within play. Stealth sections show the same love and care as you silently decimate a squad like Batman with Silly String. Now the odd fast switch between movesets and animation blends can be obvious if you're looking, but these dynamic moments of action are the most impressive of the game and show that constant trajectory of Sony Studios, with that as a key selling point in how they mix these together, and great for those short attention span 8-second GIF friendly brilliance. Music and sound are also very well structured. Acting and delivery is good, even if I do feel the story and the setting itself is a little weak. No one in the cast lets the side down. Equally, in-game sounds are well mixed, produced and delivered. The web shot sound never gets old, as does the swooping past cars and engine fading in and out of audio range with an accompanying car horn. This is New York after all.
I'm busy. What's up?
Have you started looking for Martin Lee yet?
No, I told you I can't start a manhunt based on a hunch from Spider-Man.
But I'm telling you, he's the guy.
Get me some solid evidence and we'll talk.
Solid evidence. Right. Hey, it's me.
Hey, so what are you thinking?
Music always accompanies any grandeur moments whilst you're swinging around the city, and it builds up as you go for a swing. I did try to look for Mr. Parker's entourage, but I never found them. Shocking, I know. Now the options on sounds are equally as good. TV, wide or mixing choices can support both headphones, TVs and full surround sound systems, improving the mixing and channel use independently. Another successful inclusion is the image quality options. You can turn off chromatic aberration, film grain and that sweet Insomniac per object motion blur that takes the 30Hz action and covers it in some CGI honey. Sweet honey. Now, completing the motion in the game and the vertical movement, both camera radial blur and the depth of the motion vectors allows a combination of outside, internal and limbs to blur with motion. Complete background can be blurred whilst you're moving, leaving Spider-Man himself clean as a whistle. And this combination between all movement and action makes everything seem just as smooth and fluid as any CGI film you've watched recently at the cinema. There are some issues here. Nothing is completely free of criticism. NPC details can be quite low at times and stand out quite jarringly with the high quality of the main characters. Loading distractions is my biggest gripe with the engine though. I really love some of the older titles that leapt into this, and I am going to bring up a reference to possibly one of the best games that this game quite clearly still has aspirations for. Yes, it may not have introduced all the things that Batman does, but this certainly is Spider-Man's Batman in an assortment of different methods, but I'll cover that in another video very shortly, which I hope you enjoy. One of the first big titles certainly this generation to usher in that seamless integration between external and internal elements and cinematics. Spider-Man regularly has moments that fade into blackness before the cinematic cuts in. It can sometimes pull back into gameplay from cinematics as well, but it never enters them as well. And having that split between certain segments in the game when you go from Spider-Man to Peter Parker is quite jarring, and quite clear that they have an internal engine aspect and an external cityscape aspect which blends between the areas. It's not a major gripe by any means, but it is certainly one that I would have hoped they would have achieved and fixed before release, but maybe the schedule was quite tight. This isn't a slight on Insomniac, but maybe it was a hurdle that was just slightly too much for what they intended to deliver in the overall package. In addition to that, visually, the night sections are the weakest element of the title. Fixed times of day allow the lighting system to work impeccably well, and there are good points in some of the gloomier seaside areas with the rain coming down. All the use of volumetric lights or billboard effects in there can look very nice indeed, and overall it's still a beautiful game consistently. The daytime and the low sunlight is absolutely impeccable, but at night time in some of the flatter areas the textures and materials just don't hold up to that same amount of scrutiny. With light beaming through the window, some use of volumetric lighting is very good, but some of the simple billboard silhouettes and volumetric billboards that they use on the light systems can fade in and out quite obviously here, so I would have liked a better nighttime system than what we finally got. In terms of reference, we hark back again to Arkham Knight, which is absolutely impeccable in terms of visual construction and aesthetic. With such an old engine, they really nailed that look, but it really only has that look.
One look! One look! I don't think so! There it is. Magnum! Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Whereas Spider-Man has quite a few other faces. There are a few artistic discretions here. Spotlights in certain interior sections that are not present. They're just shining down, but there is actually no physical spotlight there to see. Somebody placed a point light and forgot to actually map a physical object. One other element is there's not enough boss or epic moments in the game. There are some, and there are some excellent ones which really utilise the web-swinging abilities of the character itself within the battle, which really work well. But I think the single biggest gameplay letdown for the overall title is the quite relatively tacked-on moments of stealth, which are horrendous. But the AI is quite poor in terms of seeing you. You can whip past people, smash through boxes, and just zip through people's faces, and no one reacts to you. And then add in these horrible stealth elements, and I will say horrible, they just don't work very well. They're so simple that you can just run past them and skip through them. Even some of the elements in the title where you're running through the elevator chute, you can just skip the whole area by running, and it kind of makes a mockery of the fact they're trying to balance the pacing, which I understand, but instead it comes across as slightly frustrating that you don't get back to doing what the game does really well, which is the whole Spider-Man section, which should have been its bread and butter. I do feel as if there's been external influences on the team to add more to the title, rather than keep this as a Spider-Man core battle. Visually, it is an impressive title, and Insomniac have really raised their quality to another level here. It's one of the best looking open cityscapes I've ever seen, with loads of detail, intricate little touches, and excellent lighting that really gets to shine across a material system that is worthy of very high praise indeed. Across the board, intricate systems, water areas, and beautiful scenery, and that physics and destruction system is worthy of very high praise indeed, used abundantly throughout the title. It certainly ticks all those boxes, but I really wish it had more in the locker in terms of delivery of content, rather than padding the game out with other elements which don't feel anywhere near as polished as the core gameplay hook of being Spider-Man and that spider detective.
You're in luck, Yuri. Your favorite tough but lovable, grizzled, seen-too-much detective is in town.
What? No. You promised you wouldn't do that anymore.
Spider Cop.
And with that, the trail has gone cold, and we have reached the end of a in-depth look after the hype look at Spider-Man on the PS4 and the PS4 Pro. If you like this content and what I put forward, or if you don't like this content and want to give me some criticism and feedback, then either or, please leave it below or on Twitter and chat to me anywhere where possible. You can read more content on the Rectify Gaming website, and obviously you can view a lot more content on my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe and share this video where appropriate, as it really helps me immensely. And to try and increase my reach and my repertoire, you can also support the channel on Patreon, which really helps, and I really appreciate everyone that already does that to help me expand and improve my quality further. As always, you guys and girls, take care, and I'll see you very soon somewhere else on the web. Yeah, I know, crap joke. I'll catch you on the next one.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Good. Happy Halloween.